I'm wondering what was the early days of Les Mills in terms of expansion and getting into other countries.
So Les Mills first started as gyms in New Zealand. What they first started doing is partnering with what we call independents or partners who would go into other countries and sell in licensing deals to clubs. And that's what helped us start to grow in the beginning.
Would you say that the goal is to have as similar as possible sessions around the world in different gyms, or is it to have as different as possible, being more culturally centric to that specific location?
Content, which we call our product or our programs themselves, should be the same anywhere you take them. Those programs should always manifest themselves to be the same anywhere you are and with who's teaching it. And the reason is they have been researched, they have been tested, we're proving that they're effective.
How do you see the world in VR?
VR and XR is getting some people who were not active in fitness before to become active in fitness. I think for what's the future of VR and XR, I don't see it going away. More and more companies are getting into the space, but I do believe that it's going to keep evolving and changing rapidly.
Amber, it's great to see you. Great to have this discussion. I wanted to ask you before we get into the details about Les Mills and your career in the past. How did you get into running?
Oh gosh. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me here. It's great to chat again and to be on the podcast. So, how did I get into running? I have been running since I was a little kid. I'm actually doing this recording from my dad's dining room table right now in San Anselmo in California. And it's interesting because I just went for a run now and I crested the top of a hill behind his house and looked down, and there was my high school track. Um,
Mm.
but I I started running in elementary school and then middle school, mainly because I can't catch a ball or kick a ball. I'm terrible at ball sports, but I'm really fast, so I could always run away from the ball. And I decided to take that and to apply it more to track and cross country. And then all throughout school, I did track and cross country. Um, Took a break in college because I joined a sorority and decided to do other things than run competitively. And then after college, got into marathons and haven't stopped since then.
How does someone train for marathons these days?
Well, I don't think I'm the best person to ask that. I don't train well. I typically go out and run as far as I can run. But what you really should do is a build and listen to your body and build up in the mileage and do different things from sprints, hill repeats, and then the long distance runs. I think doing at least one or two 20-mile runs before the marathon is critical.
Mhm.
Primarily because your body and muscles need to learn how to do that. You don't wanna blow out your knees, you don't wanna blow out your lower back or your feet. Also, the long distance is so important for the brain. I find that in running, especially distance, it's the mind that tires before the body, so training the brain there is key. And the older I get, the more important it is to cross train, but really throughout my running career, I have found that when I cross train, I move faster. In fact, at Les Mills, we've got some research that shows that our core programs are really good for runners. I find personally it helps me go faster when I do core and glute mainly, but anything strength, and then, of course, other stretching. But it also helps you prevent injury because the worst thing that can happen in running is to get an injury, and then you're out of the favorite thing that you have that you can do.
You mentioned something very interesting, that the mind gives up before the body, and it's certainly my experience as well. Did you find something interesting in terms of training there, or is it that just forcing yourself to go through the pain and you just don't stop?
I think part of that comes in training, in learning how to keep going further and learning to be with your thoughts. Or if you want to turn your thoughts off, listen to something. I listen to a lot of podcasts when I run. I use the running time as a time to keep learning. But then also I'll let my mind wander. But that's where your mind starts to get either fatigued or overwhelmed or tired. In long distance, for me, it's always at about mile 20 when my mind starts to give up or hit that wall, what they call the wall in marathons or in races. And I find that talking myself through it saying the mind tires before the body helps. Now, if there's something in the body that's really hurting, I have a torn meniscus as an example, and if I start feeling a zing in my knee, I'll listen to that. But if it's not, if it's more that fatigue or those lead legs or just feeling a little bit like jello, I'll try to work through that mentally during the race. I personally do a lot of visualization during
Mm.
races. Like my first, my only half Ironman, a coach taught me to do this visualization where I would picture butterflies actually pulling me. And so if I get really fatigued in a race, I'll do that and I'll picture something pulling me. But the main thing is just to remember that if the training's done, that I did the training and that I can push through it. Because inevitably, at the end of a race, after 10 seconds, I'll feel good again and ready to go again. Mm, most of the time. Sometimes after a marathon, I wanna lay down and have a Diet Coke, but most of the time when I stop, I'll feel good again after a quick breath.
Yeah, yeah. It's running a marathon afterwards. It's just it takes so many days to
Yeah,
recover. Honestly,
yeah,
super.
yeah.
Did that experience get you into Nike, or how did you learn about the Nike opportunity back in the day?
Yeah, well, the reality is I actually applied to Nike 8 times before I got the role, and
Wow.
then ironically, none of those applications got me in, or a headhunter brought me in. So I started my career in communications and in B2B and web middleware, and then went to Amazon, which we can talk more about later. Um, but then I had a short break there, and a recruiter found me, and the job was a dream job, and it was a perfect fit at Nike. So I got in more by a fluke, by having the right experience, and then by being discovered by a recruiter online.
Wow. And Melanie last time mentioned when I was speaking with her Nike experience in the interviews that they had her running for the interview process. Did you have something similar?
I did not have
No.
running for the interview process. I The process was pretty robust. I had a couple phone screens, and at the time I was living in Seattle, so took the train up and had about 8 interviews. No running, it was a full panel of interviews. That's pretty neat, though. I wanna use that trick with other people.
Yeah,
I
it's so nice.
did get taken on a run for my Les Mills interview. I think that was a test in flexibility and brain and partnership, but no running for Nike.
Interesting. And then what your role at Nike was what?
So I started there as a director of product. My role was in the central product management organization. And when I very first started, my role was to go in and teach other people how to do product. So I would embed with teams and teach people how to do expected outcomes or working backwards documents and plans or sequencing in a roadmap. But then after about 2 or 3 months, I was embedded into the Nike Training Club team to work with them to build up and launch Nike Training Club Premium, a paid premium subscription tier of NTC, which we did really rapidly. We did it in under a year, and it was a great experience. We built up NTC Premium. We wound up canceling it during COVID because we wanted everyone to have access to sports, especially during COVID at no cost. And from Nike, it was a way to drive engagement. Um, and then very rapidly through my career there, so I got embedded on NTC and then took over something called a transformational initiative. It was the editorial transformational initiative to work across digital and across marketing to help speed up our time to plan, produce, and publish content and really make sure that we could have always on storytelling for athletes. Nike said if it says if you have a body, you're an athlete. So it was really how do we increase the velocity of content for athletes? Right content, right touch points, right time, and got to work on that for a bit. And then pulling it forward another year later, I became VP of MarTech and personalization. So I oversaw more of the back end tools and systems for how we supported marketing MarTech and then the homepage and website for personalization.
Considering product, um, can you walk me through maybe what's great product for you? What's your philosophy in terms of the product? And you mentioned something about training other folks about product. Let's say that also someone joins right now Les Mills and you're going to train them about this product, what is the best way to explain them and help them to understand
Oh,
product?
it's a big question, and I love this. It's a super timely question. At Les Mills, we've been on a journey of evolving how we do product, to be totally candid. So I'll tell you really quickly about that journey, because then it'll take me into the philosophy and what we do, because we're actively doing this right now. In the past, and actually Nike was the same. In the past, we worked a lot with vendors to build things and launch them, and it was exactly what we needed to do at the time for rapid growth for the company. But that was more an outsource model, and the way that it worked was much more waterfall. Now we're shifting much more to a product operating model, which is agile. And we have, instead of product owners, we have product managers. Some companies have both, some companies just have one or the other. I bias to product managers. And the job of the product manager is to take all of the research they can on voice of customer, what we're hearing and seeing from psychographic research, behavioral data on what people are doing, and then work back from that and from market segment opportunity or business problem to solve, and work back into the epics and into the problems to solve. And what we have now at Les Mills is we have a really robust product operating model flow, and we have templates and mechanisms, because we don't want people to come in and think about how to work. We want the how to work just to be simple, just to have scalable mechanisms and templates. Like, we have a template for how to do an expected outcome, which would be the ROI on doing something, cost or productivity savings. We have a template for how to do a product requirements doc. Part of the templates also are really important because they include things like privacy and security checks, which have to be integrated in anything anybody does in digital. And then we've got a product operating model flow, where at Les Mills, we have product managers we have one who leads club, one for instructor, and one for mover. Or we have directors, and those directors have product managers under them. And their job is to take all of that data and research, and then take what the matrix of the company needs, and then identify what are going to be the biggest problems to solve. And then we have a whole flow from there. They'll come up with the problem statement and then the work back plan from that through to epics. The whole way, product is connecting with engineering, product designer, UX, and then our marketing and our business teams to make sure that we're making trade-offs on the what and the why of things that we're prioritizing. And then for the most part, engineering always owns the how. And we go through this process where we get really precise on what's the problem we're solving. Is it the right problem? Is it big enough? Is it going to drive productivity or growth or retention, which is associated with the specific metric? And then they get to the stories and work with engineering. The reason I said it's important that engineering owns the how to is what I've found, not just at Les Mills, but everywhere. Companies who outsource product to a lot of people wind up having multiple different ways of doing engineering and multiple different architectural solutions, which can add to the tech debt. And so, what we're really trying to do is in the how, we have specific engineering leaders for our different customer sets and journeys as well. They own the how, they own the decisions for, what solutions they outsource, what they build themselves, how they build. But across all of engineering, we're getting really consistent with our what we call engineering excellence. Mainly so if an engineer had to traverse to a different team, they could, but partly also so that we just have good architectural hygiene and reduce duplication, which adds cost and a lot of risk. That was more than the product question you asked, but I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I'm also interested to understand how can you guide someone to understand the product. Let's say it's their first role. How what do you want to train them for?
That's a great question. I think when someone's so I started my career in marketing, not in product. Actually, I started my career in teaching and then got into marketing and then got into product. I think for anybody coming into product, the first and the most important thing to train on is obsess the problem, not obsess the idea. And the problem can come from really listening to what the customer is doing, so getting really sharp on those customer metrics. That can come through NPS, customer surveys, um, market segment trends that you're able to find uh, through industry newsletters and otherwise. But I think the first thing for a new person coming into product is what is the problem and getting articulate about the problem. And then I think it's important for product managers to understand how to do an expected outcome. It's easy to have ideas, but being able to articulate the value of an idea and making sure that the cost of building for that idea is less than the value, and then that the value is scalable into something that you're going to want for a V1, V2, and beyond is really important. Um, and then I think for product, especially, knowing how to work with other functions is critically important. So the learning or the ability to listen like you don't know the answers to things before you have ideas is really important. And that manifests from listening to the customer, listening to the business teams, getting really close with finance and legal, and of course, making engineers and UX your best friend. You've got to be connected at the hip with engineers and UX. I think those are all critically important. And there's a lot of good online courses for product managers. Silicon Valley Product has good ones. Lenny's podcast is really good for new to product. There's a lot of great books on it. But I think coming in with the mindset of obsess with the customer needs, obsess the problem over anything else, get the data points to formulate the right ideas that are scalable and that are going to drive business growth, retention, which equates to making more money, or productivity, and then being humble and working across teams are the most critical for getting started. Being humble is critical for every single career choice, but the other pieces are really important for product.
Super. The you have been from multiple companies to Amazon to Nike, and then Les Mills, which is in New Zealand, and you were in the US before. So how does someone make that choice on moving so many hours away?
Yeah. Well, gosh, it was a big choice. It is many, many hours away. I think you probably couldn't get further away from the US or from anywhere on the planet than New Zealand. Les Mills, I met Les Mills through a recruiter, and I was so lucky to do that. And then got to meet the founder and the old CEO at the time, and immediately loved the company and loved the team. And Les Mills is headquartered and based in New Zealand. It's a 55-year-old company with deep, deep roots there, and it's quite phenomenal. We can talk more about that later. Um, but the decision to move was primarily because of the role. And when I met Les Mills and was talking to them, I have twins. At the time, they were 13. They're 15 now. And we figured that 13 was the last chance to move to another country without totally messing up our kids, I hope. I think they're turning out pretty great. And so we chose to do it because the company's phenomenal and I want to help the world through fitness and sport. But also, it was the opportunity for an adventure. For moving to Les Mills or for moving to New Zealand, I was lucky because I was sponsored for my visa to go there and have something called a residency visa, which you can apply to after you've been working there for a certain amount of time. There's other ways to move in there, multiple different visa and career opportunities with New Zealand and with other places that are important to look at, but we lucked out because I was able to move for a great company and a great job and then move to arguably one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Um, it's been challenging. It's a 19-hour time difference from my parents and our friends and our home, which actually in the end doesn't isn't that bad because we can still have the same day, just I'm a day ahead in New Zealand. Um, and the travel is certainly hard. It's a 13-hour flight, but it has proven to be the best life adventure and experience we've ever done.
What do you actually do in the first week that you join a new company? And you joined Les Mills, so what did you actually do?
In the first actually, in the first month, I think what I did was be as curious as possible. I spent a lot of time meeting people around the company and learning both what we do, but also why we do it, and asking questions around what's working, what's easy, what's hard, what are the problems that we're solving? How does the portfolio work together? But the whole first month was listening and learning. And then with my team, the team that reported into me, spending a lot of time on getting to know people at a real human level. I think the people and the ability to partner as a team who really cares about each other is one of the most important things. So, yeah, that was the whole first month. Listen, learn, build relationships, understand the human beings, and understand who's working with whom and what the dynamics are. And then really digging into what are the areas that are working to make sure that we don't change those or that we double down on those and make them better. And what are the areas that are confusing or hard. And I have pages and pages of notes from my first onboarding. 2 years later, I still look back at them because those are some of the early first impressions and first ideas. I do tend to think when people join a new company, some of their best ideas come in the first 3 months. However, I think it's important to be in listen first mode. There's that saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in that order. I think that's more important than ever in the first month of being anywhere, and then holding all those ideas to reference back to at a later time when you have enough knowledge of why things are the way they are,
Yeah.
um, and potentials.
Amber, there is this saying from many entrepreneurs that they speak about that when you bring in a position of leadership someone outside of the company, it's more difficult culturally. How would you suggest someone navigating this situation?
I tend to agree with that. I think, every company has a different culture and a different way of working. And this is why I think going in and really being a sponge and learning and curious in the beginning is super important to understand the way of working in the culture first before trying to change anything. I think, like, having worked at Amazon and at Nike, those 2 company cultures and ways of working are night and day. Totally different. Both of them obsess the customer first, but then the way you get work done is completely different. Amazon does working backwards documents, large data. You go into a meeting and read first, and then you talk. Nike really obsesses how you make people feel and what you can do. Lots of PowerPoints, no Word documents, and a different type of use of data and storytelling. And so having the experience at those 2 companies helped me come into Les Mills to understand the need to listen first before putting what I think might drive change or progress. And to be candid, I have changed many things, like the way that we work in product and the way that we work in engineering and moving more to a product model instead of an outsource or waterfall model. Um, but I never would have been able to make those changes without understanding why the company operated the way it operated first. Because I probably, if I had come in and proposed changes in the first month, I probably would have gotten some of those proposals wrong. At Nike, we used to have a phrase that the body might reject the organ. And it was for when people came in from outside companies and immediately tried to impose what they did in the past on Nike. The same thing is true at Les Mills or at any company. If somebody comes in and doesn't understand the why or the ways of working and immediately wants to change things, even if they're good changes, it's met with a little bit of a, "Hold on, you need to understand the 55-year culture and history first." So I really practiced that coming in at Les Mills. Like, for myself, I'm on the SLT, report into the CEO, I present to the board. Um, I'm I'm very lucky in that our board, our founder, our leadership team, I genuinely like them. There's a couple that I hang out with outside of work, but really respect them, and we all have very different superpowers. We all come from different companies and we all come from different ways of doing things in the past. I think taking the time to understand the people and the way of working and then have the conversations to propose some changes was critically important. The other thing is, and I found this more recently, coming in and saying, we did this at Amazon or we did this at Tibco doesn't work. And I don't think that people should go into companies and impose what was at their last company. I think it's important for companies to build the mechanisms and ceremonies and ways of working that that company needs. And that's going to be predicated on where are your teams? What are the problems you're solving? What are the immediate goals? Or if you have a thematic goal, and then pick and choose the right mechanisms and ceremonies to drive that. Because it's just like in building a roadmap or in building what you want for a product strategy. You need to start with the problem first and come up with the proposals on the how. If somebody goes into a company and says, "We do 6 pagers and we do working backwards documents and start meetings with reading," well, it may or may not be addressing a problem. That's a mechanism that worked somewhere else that may not fit with the culture. So, I think coming in and understanding how things work, and then where are there gotchas or maybe things that could be improved, and then streamlining those is really important, especially at senior levels, um, because you need the partnership and you need to take teams on the journey with you.
I'm wondering what was the early days of Les Mills in terms of expansion and getting into other countries. The reason I am asking this is I come from a very small country, which is Cyprus, and I remember like 15 years ago and 20 years ago, every gym in the country actually was doing Les Mills program,
So cool.
and it's in the other side of the world. Like how was this made?
Yeah. I gotta tell you, our founders are pretty brilliant. When they first started the company, so Les Mills first started as gyms in New Zealand. Les Mills is actually a person. He was an Olympic athlete and just a really incredible businessman in New Zealand. He's still alive. And then his son, Philip Mills, saw an opportunity to expand the business and what we're doing. And in the early days of the company expansion, we have actually 2 companies. There's LMNZ, which is our New Zealand gyms, and LMI, which is our international businesses, licensing, and distribution. I'm on the LMI side. What Philip and Jackie did in the beginning, Jackie is, the Philip's wife, the co-founder. She leads all of our content and creative. She's our chief content. What they first started doing is partnering with what we call independents or partners who would go into other countries and sell in licensing deals to clubs. And that's what helped us start to grow in the beginning. And then slowly over time, we bought some of those independents back. And so now we have our own market CEOs who own different territories. So we have a CEO of the US, UK, who go and own a specific territory and drive growth there. But it started through independents and partners, and now we have a mix of where we sell directly, and then in some places, we still have independents who we partner with who sell on our behalf. And what they're specifically selling is they do the licensing into gyms, where they sell the ability for the gym to have our programs, and they also sell the ability for gyms to have our virtual solution or something called immersive, which is a really cool cycling experience with a product called the Trip. And then they also help build up and sell to bring instructors in. Instructors pay to go through training, and it's a amazing training. I actually did the training. It's the best leadership experience I've ever had in my entire career. And you get certified to be a Les Mills instructor. And so that happens at the market level. And it grew rather organically over time, going from the independents to buying back some of them. And now we have the hybrid, which feels like the perfect mix where people really understand a territory and are able to build relationships in that territory. Because on the B2B side, again, just like with product, those CEOs and our customer experience managers and sales and operations, they really need to know what the business is, what gyms need in that region, because sometimes they're different. So for example, in the UK, you have to work with the government to bid on some of them. In some countries, gyms have a hard time because electricity costs are more than they used to be. In some countries, or even cities, there are changes with some of the customer trends. So it's important we have those people in region to obsess what the needs are and then make sure that we can help our club partners have the best business experience possible. Because what we really want when we sell into them is we want the club to do better. We want them to drive member growth. and retention, and we know that our group training content is a key part of making that happen.
Would you say that the goal is to have as similar as possible sessions around the world in different gyms, or is it to have as different as possible, being more uh, culturally centric to that specific location?
So, it's a nuanced answer. The content, which we call our product or our programs themselves, should be the same anywhere you take them. We do new releases of our programs every 3 months. Each release is research backed. We research everything. We work with PhDs and physios on what's right for that program. Like right now, we're launching Body Combat 100. It's the 100th release of it, which is really, really exciting. And we've done the iterations every 3 months. But those programs should always manifest themselves to be the same anywhere you are and with who's teaching it. And the reason is they have been researched, they have been tested. We're proving that they're effective. We test everything from um, we don't look at calorie burn and weight loss as part of what we do, but we do test the effectiveness of the different programs. And so we want those to always be consistent and the same. The things that will be slightly different per location or per place is our instructors are from the areas where they're teaching for the most part, or the instructors are local to those areas. We want all of them to have their own personality and to bring that in. Now, we do also have a really rigorous instructor training program where they have to go through training, they get tested. Not everybody can become an instructor because we want to make sure that the instructors are going to teach in a safe and engaging way. So there is some consistency there, but they'll always bring their own cultural or personal flair to the class, which is excellent because group training is a very human experience, and you want that human experience which will be slightly different. So the content and the movements will be the same, and then there will be some nuance in how it comes to life based on how the gym feels, who's teaching it, and some of those other factors.
I've read somewhere online that you have 15,000 workout options on Les Mis Plus. What can you tell us about good discovery and product discovery?
Yes, we have right now, I think we're at 2,500 workouts in Les Mills Plus, but there's different cuts of them and different durations. Last year, we launched a more personalized onboarding flow because that can be really overwhelming. If somebody's coming into the app or the experience of Les Mills Plus is our paid subscription experience for movers to be able to work out wherever they are. It's available on desktop, on mobile. You can engage with it on TV as well. But to the total quantity number, that can be quite overwhelming, especially if you don't know what you're looking for. So, back to what I was saying, last year we launched a personalized onboarding flow where people are onboarding for their first time. We'll ask some really simple questions around their goals, what they want to do, average durations that they want. Even sometimes those can change, and then we make recommendations based on that. And then what our team does on a rolling basis, we obsess the browse and search how people are discovering and engaging because we want people to get into a workout the first time they download the app. And then we want it to be dead simple to them for them to find workouts when they go back. We have a fairly robust browse and search experience, and then we have all of our programs clustered by program name as well. What we find is a lot of people who do our classes in gyms find programs that they love. Like they might love Body Pump. That's our number one kind of flagship product. And then they'll come in and that's what they want to do in the app. So we group all of Body Pump so they can find it in one place. And then per program, we know that people will have different amounts of time that they can do a workout. So we'll have those options easily available on the workout page so the individual can pick. We're continuing to refine our personalization and our recommendations for how we bring the best classes to people. But we really want to make it easy for when a mover, we call them a mover, the person who moves, when they come in for them to find something within one click or less. And then we also merchandise our new programs as well as other recommended programs on the homepage. So we've got some new launches coming out imminently with Pilates and Body Combat I mentioned and some other ones. So we'll put those on the homepage for a little bit because people likely don't know that we have them yet, to help people discover them. And by the way, those new programs are really amazing. I hope you try them. So we'll help by manually merchandising to start to help drive that awareness, rolling personalization based on what people explicitly told us. And we do recommended next for people so you can see recommended for you. And then that search and browse. Kinda just like you would find if you were shopping for something, but we're trying to bring the right class to people,
Yeah.
based on what they want.
Would you say that in the ideal scenario, is the best discovery having a homepage that knows you, or is it being fully customizing, knowing that specific person and giving them only the one program that they want?
I don't know that those are mutually exclusive. And this is where sometimes personalization I love personalization, and I believe if I had to pick one, having a homepage that really knows you is ideal.
Mm,
The problem with that is sometimes what a person said they want is different than what they're actually gonna do. And also, people's goals change. So, as an example, right now I have a running injury, so I can't do the same things that I used to do. I need to do more core and Pilates and some of the stretch programs. Whereas what I normally would do is strength and body pump and combat. I can still do those, but what my body actually needs is something different. And that's where personalization algorithms don't always get everything right because the user needs change over time. And so whilst I think having a more personalized homepage based on what an individual has said they want and what they do, and that personalization getting smarter and smarter over time to be able to nudge people on the right programs is key. We also need to give an easy ability for people to override that or for people to find something else that they want based on some kind of life change. It could also be that I normally work out an hour every day, 6 days a week, but now all of a sudden I've had some life change and I only have 15 minute increments at different times during the day. My needs for a certain period of time are gonna be different, and we wanna be able to serve that and what people need. Um, so it's a little bit of a balance. I would err more and more to personalization because the smarter we can get to give people recommendations based on series that we know work or we'll build out programs and recommendations. Those are really powerful because people don't always know how to put them together themselves. They're not trainers, they're not PTs. They shouldn't have to know that. So we take away the thinking part of that. But the ability to override that and find other things is also important.
If you would advise an early stage company right now in terms of content, how do they create great content and how do they distribute that content? How would you do that?
Oh, I wish we could clone Jackie 1,000 times.
Mm.
Jackie Mills is the leader of group training, and Diana Archer Mills also is a key leader in group training. They really obsess what are trends, what do people want, and then they build for what works, and there's a lot of thinking and testing that goes into that. Um, I think the first most important thing with content is make sure that it's effective and make sure that it's safe. What I'm seeing a lot on YouTube and TikTok and other platforms is, a huge breadth and quantity of content because a lot of companies are starting to produce it really rapidly and a lot of user-generated content, but it's not all safe, and that really scares me because in a time where we need more people or and the world needs fitness more than it ever has before. I don't know if you've read any of the latest WHO, studies or papers, but obesity continues to rise, fitness continues to go down. We need more good content. So for companies who are getting started, though, make sure that the content's safe and make sure that it's what people want. So what I would really advise is looking at what are the psychographics of what people want to engage with, where they want to engage with them, the types of content, getting precise on that, and then being excellent in making sure that it's safe and tested before you publish anything. Because as soon as companies start publishing things that are not safe, they will lose people, but then the industry loses people too, so it's bad for all of us. Um, I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, I wanted to also ask you about VR. Um, how do you see the world in VR? I know that you're doing very well there. Can you give us some insights in terms of VR, and how do you see the future of this? Is this going to be us wearing a device and then doing all our training there? Is this going to be some sort of hybrid? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you how we got into it and then some hypotheses because I think the world of VR is continuing to evolve. And now we're looking more at XR, extended reality. We got into VR about 2 years ago working with Meta and Pico, and we've got a really great partner called Otters who are based out of Spain, and they built our VR games and experiences. And we got in as early tests with Meta and Pico, and we were really lucky that we did. We started doing it with Body Combat, and then we have another title called Dance, which just came out this year, which are exciting. The reason we got into them is we wanted to test the grounds. We saw that the technology of VR was starting to pick up. The market segment size of VR and XR is growing quite a bit year over year. So we wanted to get in and test, and we did just that. We worked really closely with Meta, Otters, and ourselves to produce games, and then we had Body Combat on Pico as well. Pico's a big company out of China, and the first one was a test and learn. Could we build the games? And what we found is they were hugely popular on the Meta, or in Quest, drove super high retention, super high awareness and growth, and they continue to do that. Last year at their conference, Mark Zuckerberg, I think, referenced our company more than any other one. We were the number one in fitness, which was quite exciting. We do believe there's a future in XR. I think what's currently VR is gonna continue to change. We're already seeing more companies building headsets, and we're seeing headsets evolve and get smaller and more discreet. And then we're also starting to see new kinds of XR, wearables, like the Meta Ray-Ban collaboration was fascinating. Cameras are getting smaller and smaller, and what companies can do with the headsets it's evolving very quickly. I think you and I probably remember when there were glass holes. I was living in Seattle at the time when that was being tested, and it didn't really work, and part of it is, this is my opinion, not others' opinions, so take it as that, but part of it is they were really ugly, and nobody wanted to be watched all the time. But now headsets are starting to evolve very quickly, and what you can do in them is evolving very quickly. We've also seen that VR and XR is getting some people who were not active in fitness before to become active in fitness, which is really exciting. So we want to keep leaning into that and learning into that. As an example, last year, we had a woman tell us that her father wouldn't leave the house because he was too embarrassed and he wouldn't work out. And she bought him a Quest headset for Christmas because he liked gaming, and he started doing our body combat workouts because it felt like a game, not like a workout, and he got super into it and then started on a fitness journey. We love that a new form factor can actually get somebody to start building healthy habits and start something new. We love stories like that. I think for what's the future of VR and XR, I don't see it going away. More and more companies are getting into the space, but I do believe that it's going to keep evolving and changing rapidly. We don't know what that might mean. I can assume that there's going to be more hardware form factors and they're going to start increasing in the innovation that comes there and making them more and more discreet. And then we want to keep testing and learning into what's going to work there. Again, we don't wanna just build for the solution. However, with new technologies like XR, human behavior starts to change because it's a new way of engaging in the world around you. And so we want to start learning how can we take that new technology and that new capability and help people start building habits with fitness and stick with their habits with fitness. We hypothesize that that's going to span in real life settings as well as at home settings. So we're exploring what that might mean. Um, but I think that we're all inventing the future of that together right now, which is quite exciting.
Would you be more inclined towards the VR experience, like in the gym, recreating the gym experience inside of VR and XR, or more inclined to creating a game that is a new reality that doesn't exist?
Oh, that's a big
And what
question.
do you think in fitness would be more beneficial?
I think the short answer is we need to figure out what the movers are gonna want as well as what the gyms are gonna want and test both. We are hearing from gyms that they want to have more new innovation and test more. We know that our virtual and immersive solutions are really successful in gyms. Um, Sometimes those have an instructor with them, and sometimes they don't. That's not VR or XR, that's just immersive on a big screen within a gym. So we already know that people want to engage in, uh, more digital and immersive ways in real life settings, which is cool. And we want to keep building on that. We would like to invent with gyms for gyms on what's going to be the best for movers there. And I think a lot of that's going to come down to rapid prototype and testing on what's actually going to help drive interactivity with fitness and growth. I hypothesize that both will manifest over the next couple years where you'll have experiences with gyms where people might be able to engage with a gym from home, potentially, as well as who knows, maybe you could do body pump on Mars. We're not making that right now, but it'd be pretty nifty. So I think just the way that the hardware, but more than that, the way that the software is evolving so quickly to enable new experiences is gonna let us test a lot of things, and that's what we need to do. We need to work with our club partners and figure out where there's an appetite to test, and then really figure out what's gonna move the needle for movers. And we'll only lean into things if it's actually gonna help bring safe, effective group training content to life. What we don't wanna do is just build stuff for the sake of cool new tech.
What's the current if we go behind the scenes currently into the VR experience and the content that you generate, can you give us some insights there? How are these things being created? Like, do you have a lot of 3D modeling, for example, or is it more of a using 3D cameras to do that work, or what are some insights there?
So we still use our PDs or our group training experts for creating the content. And I think VR is one of the best examples of marrying science and art. We have our instructors putting together the program and what's going to be in the content. So, for example, with Body Combat, it's Dan and Rach, who are our two instructors who really kept bringing Body Combat to life. Now we have a lot of other amazing instructors there, but they were our talent in VR. And then we have multiple cameras that we film with, and we have a combination of instructor and avatar for producing the content. Our content is very instructor and human led because just like we want with our digital content and our content in gym settings, we want it to be safe and we want all of the moves to be very precise. And so we use the people who are experts at that in building the VR content. And then this is where otters come in. They layer in the science, the what needs to be captured through the cameras, how we edit that, how we turn it into a game. They layer that in on top of it. And they've got a really good playbook for how we do that. With dance, we also used instructors, but we're testing with a combination of instructor and avatar where you don't have to have a human doing all the filming, but it needs to be predicated on the safe movements from the from the filming, um, human filming. And so we'll bring people into a special recording space. We've got the cameras set up for that. And then we sync the music to the movements just like we do for 2D content. So a lot of the filming is the same as it is for 2D content, but then the editing and the technology that sits on top of that is specific to VR, XR experiences.
For my two final questions, what does the roadmap look like for Les Mills?
Right now, we're really obsessing how can we help clubs be excellent? And so we're looking a lot at um, we've been growing our club base year over year, and that's really exciting around the world. We as we're coming we're I believe we're still coming back from COVID and everybody's coming back to life. Last year was much more a reentry into that, but clubs have all kinds of new challenges than what they had 4 years ago, and we wanna make sure that we can help them grow and retain their members. So we're really obsessing that with new content, new programs, bringing them the best instructors who can teach in the club. And that's the number one thing we're focused on. We have a couple new innovations with our content that we're doing. And so on the digital side, we prioritize how do we support and serve that, making it dead simple for clubs to find and manage instructors, making it dead simple for them to get access to their programs, which include live and virtual. And then we're also spending a lot of time on what happens out of club, but that drives this flywheel of fitness. And that includes continuing to innovate in our D2C experiences, Les Mills Plus and Les Mills content. Les Mills content is a logged out experience where people can discover and engage with content. Typically, we use that to support engagement with clubs. And so we have some innovation there. And then we're spending a lot of time on privacy, security, and what I call the beautiful basics of platform hygiene, because that will drive productivity, cost savings, and scalability for the company. Really tactically, our roadmap's clustered by customer. We obsess all of the work against our movers, clubs, and instructors. And then we have shared work across those beautiful basics that I mentioned. And if you were to look at the roadmap, you'd quickly see that a lot of it airs to how can we obsess making clubs excellent and making things dead simple for them. Everything on the roadmap has an expected outcome, what we expect to do, and some of the trade offs. But it's not all value drops. We have problem statements that we're solving for because we will be agile based on the needs of the customers and change things throughout the quarter and throughout the year. So the roadmap that you see today might be slightly different in 2 months.
I remember I ask all the guests if we're 100 years into the future and we look backwards, what would you say are the things that we'd be witnessing and we're saying that we're doing them today in training and fitness and they're wrong?
And they're wrong. I love that there are influencers and people who want to help in the world of fitness, but rapidly creating content that's not safe can actually really hurt people. So I think if we look back and see that, that's the one risk. I want to make sure that people are creating things that truly help people. Um, I think Les Mills is leaning in a lot to something that we call born to move, which is getting kids to move. I think more people need to lean into that. Kids, and this is in that WHO article too, child and adolescent obesity is going up and mental health is going down. I think we're missing the mark on helping that entire population, and we need to, not just for the future of fitness and the fitness industry, but it's because it's the right thing to do for human beings. We know that healthier people are happier people, and frankly, I don't think we're doing enough to help in that space. And so I think from a health and fitness, it's how do we really bring access to everybody and make sure that they have access to get inspired and move in safe and fun and delightful ways? And then how do we double down on that access and make sure that we can build healthy habits where, like, I love to run and I feel a little bit crazy if I don't run on a certain day, but that's weird. Most people don't love that or want that every day. So, how do we as an industry make things that are lovable so that we can help take people on the journey because it's good for them? Um, I think those are two. I think the diversity in content and safety in content, and then access to fitness are the 3 things that are the most top of mind, that I personally obsess a lot, and I think we all should, for the future of the industry, but more than that, just for helping human beings in a time when they really need help.
Super insightful conversation. Thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you very much. This was fun.